Hello and welcome to this pre-recorded event for Government and Politics, with a focus on the AS Units 1 and 2. To help you get the most out of this feedback, you may want to have the following documents handy, as we will refer to them during the session. The 2015 question papers and mark scheme for Units 1 and 2, a copy of the specification, a copy of the Getting Started publication. All of these are available on the website, together with examination papers and, importantly, examiner reports for each session or series of exams dating back to 2009. The latter you will find extremely useful, as it highlights good practice on each area of the specification, and where in past series candidates have performed below par and areas where they have excelled. The overall aim of this session is to review the structure and content of the qualification. However, it is specifically to look at example assessment materials from the last series. In the process, we aim to address common issues and frequently asked questions which arise, and can serve as a guide in how to work with candidates for future series. There are a number of scripts which have been selected, and it will be advisable for you to stop the recording and read them, then take in the feedback and key points. All the scripts have been marked by the whole team and fully discussed. Assessment objectives are important, and addressing these, and candidates appreciating the terms on which they are being examined, are very relevant. The specification gives guidance on the assessment objectives. There are 3 AOs. AO1 refers to knowledge and understanding. AO2 refers to analysis and evaluation, essentially critical awareness. AO3 looks at communication skills and pertinent use of political terminology. Each question on the papers will have differing AO makeup. Please note the AO makeup on Part C questions, all outlined in the specification. Often questions arise as to how much in terms of content are candidates expected to produce. The clear guide is that it is wise to structure your response by minutes according to the marking totals. So, a 5-mark question merits 5 minutes, a 10-mark question 10 minutes, and the 25-mark question 25 minutes. On Unit 2, we would expect half the time allocated for the exam, 40 minutes, be given to completing the essay question. The quality of the content is far more important than the volume produced. Often questions will ask for a number of points to be produced, and this is common on Parts A and B on Unit 1. To produce more than the number requested may prove ability, but sadly there are no marks available for that excess. You will see detail on past mark schemes which relate to thresholds. These are simply the minimum features which have to be made in order to enter, not peak, into mark levels. It is sound advice to encourage candidates to plan the longer responses for the C sections on Unit 1 and 2, albeit briefly. And this advice is most advantageous for the essay section on Unit 2. There are 4 topic areas on Unit 1, which all are covered, as you will note from past series. Democracy, with special relevance to the UK, elections and electoral or voting systems, political parties, and finally pressure groups. Same format of structured questions for each question. That is, a 5-mark question based on A01, a 10-mark question comprised of 7 A01 marks and 3 A02 marks, and finally a 25-mark section comprised of all of the 3 AOs in order 8, 9, and 8. Do note, it is good advice to tell candidates that the C section carries most marks, and in selection questions, it is performance here that makes the biggest difference to the overall mark awarded. No compulsory sections. A choice of 2 from the 4 presented. This is unlike Unit 2, which has an A and B section, giving a binary choice of the 4 topics in the specification there. There is no essential need to work from A to B, then to C, but remind your candidates to put each section in the relevant part of the answer booklet. An examiner will not know the order of completion, hence it matters not. Most common is to build up to the C section of the question, but some candidates, wary of time, feel the need to complete the C section first, as the load bearer of marks. We are now going to look in detail at some past candidate work. The ones sourced are ones used in the standardization process, where a group of senior examiners agree collectively on the mark, and then use this as an example for other assistant examiners to follow. Here we are looking at 1A from Unit 1 in 2015. Read this first example and decide out of a possible 5 marks what you think it is worth. Note all marks are for AO1, that is simple knowledge and understanding. The candidate here merits full marks. It gives a definition and expands a little on it by using the example of the mandate. Next, we have elections and referendums, both clearly depicted. Moving on to another candidate, look at the B section. Again, take time to read through this. We are given a definition, and although it is correct, it is not needed for a Part B. The core of the marks are earned once again with 3 clear examples of the ways in which representative democracy could be improved. We are given recall of MPs, changing the first-past-the-post system, and finally a strengthened Freedom of Information Act, all clearly detailed. It gains 5 marks for AO1 and 3 marks for AO2. What is good to note is that this fits the descriptor of a Level 3 response, as detailed in the mark scheme. We now move to another good example of a Level 3 response. Look at how this candidate has handled the C section. Again, we have a clear introduction and a conclusion. All this adds to the AO3 mark. Then we go through a point and counterpoint exposition. We consider elections, and in particular, the first-past-the-post electoral system, the nature of the UK's constitution, and finally, the second chamber, the House of Lords. This candidate has considered the pros and cons of each point in turn. Other routes would have been to detail the case for and then the case against. Both are common, and both methods will reach the top level of marks. The C section scores 7 for each assessment objective, AO, 21 in total for this part. It becomes obvious that to reach top marks and thus high grades, solid performance is crucial in this section. Next, look at the performance of another candidate in the A and B section. This answer does not attain the same standard as the previous script. This gains 2 marks for the A section. We are given a brief one-line definition and then an example of elections. The large element on traditional legitimacy does not apply to the question. The practice is that no marks are deducted for irrelevant material. It is positive marking, and credit is simply advanced for relevant information. The B section gains a total of 5 marks, 4 for AO1 and 1 for AO2. Note that many candidates did not perform well, as they indicated problems with representative democracy, but then failed to detail a way, as requested by the question, to show how this could be rectified. Hence, here we are given correct information about the poor representation of Parliament, but not a way by which it could be changed. Next, the C section. Again, you will note a drop in levels from the previous C we looked at. This is a clear Level 2 response and gains 4 marks for each AO, to give a total of 12. Looking at the answer in more depth, it is limited by 2 factors. Firstly, it is directing the opening of the answer to making a comparison of direct and representative democracy. There is some credit here, but this is restricted. It then continues to make suggestions for ways to improve representative democracy. And this was the province of the B question. You will also note that it fails to make different points, and much of the answer simply develops 1 or 2 themes. A lesson here for candidates: make your point, and then move on to make others. There is a limit to the number of marks which can be gained from what is essentially 1 point. Adhere to and focus on the question. All too often, many candidates wish to repeat work they did in class or for homework. Read all the words in the question and focus on what is required. Make points, then move on. It is better to try and raise new avenues and points than driving around with the same topic or point. Breadth of knowledge is important. Use examples where possible to show a fuller comprehension of the topic. Examples are brilliant for showing both AO1 and AO2, and they permeate the higher level responses. It is not the quantity of what is written, but rather the quality. Don't be led by the notion that the entire booklet has to be filled. Sharp and precise answers have the ability to easily hit the core of the question. Students tended to perform well in A and B sections, then falter in the more extensive C section. The guidance for candidates is that the need to analyze and evaluate are core components of this section. It is no longer simply providing knowledge and understanding, AO1, alone. Criticism is important here. Candidates armed with a range of points, crisply and clearly made, can amass a high score. It is a technique, mastered best by practice and revision. It is good for centres to look at previous scripts and see the hallmarks required. Most candidates showed an understanding of the question and identified the key words to ensure adherence to the set question. When contemporary detail is added, this makes a vast difference. In essence, this is what the subject is about. It is not future-proof, and political events need to be incorporated wherever possible. Now let us move on to Unit 2, and begin by looking at how candidates perform on a source-based question. The AOs remain the same for parts A, B, and C. And as always, the 3 levels apply as they do in Unit 1. Take your time and read through this script. Ask yourself, is the level the same throughout? Where are there areas which could be developed more? Let us go through the content. On Part A, the script gets 5 marks, an illustration of how easy the task is. The 3 sources are identified. There is clear knowledge and understanding. In short, one can identify the clear knowledge base. Precision and clarity are here. There is superb understanding, which is core to AO1. The example used clearly illustrates precision and confidence. However, when we move on to Part B, we see less confidence and clarity. The precise approach is not present, and the response gains a creditable mark, but not at the top of Level 3. It gets 7 overall, 5 for AO1 and 2 for AO2. Moving on to Part C, the clarity we saw in Part A returns, and we have precise AO1 detail referencing the EU and clearly noting factor tame, the UK Constitution, devolution, the electoral system, and finally the increased use of referendums. All of the points are considered, and this is the source of the AO2 reward. The C section gains 21 overall, with 7 for each AO. Let us move now on to essays, or the Section B of Unit 2. Note we do have a change in format here in the AO breakdown. This is a clear example of a response in Level 3. It is clear that it achieves this based on the following. It realizes that this is specifically about presidentialism, and not simply the power of the PM, as it makes pertinent reference throughout to the concept. It considers a range of factors in this debate: the media, the prerogative powers of the PM, the traditional view of the PM, the rise of the Downing Street machine. Then, and importantly, it goes on to consider the case against presidentialism, and this is supported by accurate and precise evidence. A reasoned conclusion completes the essay, and throughout, the level of communication, AO3, is excellent. In the event, this scores 18 for AO1, 11 for AO2, and full marks 8 for AO3. From an impressive performance to a less convincing display of skills. Look at this second source question. Compare it to the previous one. Can you identify the difference? Again, let us examine why this has not reached as high a mark. On A, it begins well with clarity on conventions. The comment on the rule of law is not in the source and thus cannot be credited. Finally, the comment on statutes is correct, but not clear, and thus the response here gains 3 marks. The B section gets a total of 5 marks, 4 for AO1 and 1 for AO2. It fails to fully convert the information in the source, nor develop enough points independently. Note that to get into Level 3, both the source and own knowledge have to be developed. The further development of the source, that is, adding a new dimension to its content, is considered as own knowledge. To flesh this point out further, we are provided in the second paragraph of the source with the fact that no legislature can challenge the authority of Parliament. Own knowledge could have been developed to illustrate that the devolved parliaments cannot be supreme over Westminster. Part C is relatively lackluster, with errors and a lack of detail. It gains 12 overall, with 4 for each AO. The discussion of the House of Lords is not creditworthy. The points on the EU are, but they are poorly detailed and not explained well. Students tended to perform well in source-based questions. Invariably, the stimulus material gives most candidates a boost. Weaker candidates tend to do better on the A and B sections, and score less well on Part C. Remember, for Part A, advise candidates to look no further than the source, as material outside this cannot be rewarded here. On Part B, we are looking for the use of the source, but pertinent own knowledge introduced. The C section will call for evaluation and analysis. It will have AO2 at the heart of its context. Essay skills need care, and importantly, they need planning. A few minutes considering the question and looking for views on contested issues and topics. Time devoted to critical considerations will be time well spent. Essays will have differing views to be contested and debated. Examiners have no care which side a candidate may express a favour for, as long as differing viewpoints are raised and considered. Now, moving back to Unit 1. Let us have a look at another question and see what we can make of this response. Read through it, and then we can assess its mark. This script is a joy to read and shows that full marks are not an unattainable quest. Clear and detailed knowledge, accompanied by smart insight and evaluation, written in a clear and accessible style, delivers full marks. Have a clear understanding of various voting systems in use in the UK. These relate to the elections for the devolved assemblies, EU, and mayoral. Can use and cite recent figures to show contemporary insight. This is key data to show insight. It is no use relying on elections too far in the past. Make the detail in the here and now. Show a real insight into how the FPTP system operates, and cite strengths alongside weaknesses. You will note from the specification that it is only on this system that extended questions can be asked individually. That is, there will be no individual questions on other systems by themselves, apart from FPTP. But collectively, other systems will be raised. It is important all candidates are familiar with and confident in handling all the key concepts in the specification. Note from past papers how important it is to focus on these key concepts. In essence, the opposite of the strengths identified, easily said but crucial to attainment. No clear working knowledge of other systems from FPTP and examples of their outcome. We now have a wealth of information from other systems in the UK in use for nearly 20 years. There is no information in terms of data, which relates to outcomes of differing systems. It is impressive if the impact is shown in numerical terms, and this adds to the understanding of the mechanics of differing systems. Look at this response and get a feel for why it is awarded a lower mark than the one we just reviewed. Some facts are incorrect or vague, and unsupported by precise facts and examples. It gains 3 for A and 6 for B, 4 for AO1 and 2 for AO2. On C, it gains 4 marks for each AO. It is manifestly a Level 2 response, one down from the one just reviewed. It has 2 key faults. 1. It does not always stick 100% to the set question. And also there are factual errors, which means that the higher level skills in AO2 are weakened. This candidate on the same question has performed much better. Read through the script and look at the clear communication and the supportive examples throughout. On A, it gains 5. Then full marks again on B. Quite lengthy but all correct and brilliant examples. The C section is level 3 and gains 7 for each AO, bringing a total of 21. Moving back to Unit 1, now let us have a look at why a candidate is stuck here in Level 1. Read through the script. On A, there is no clear understanding of consensus politics. This is not unusual for weaker candidates. It is not when simply two parties agree. It is a much more defined concept and ideological at the core. It entails a widespread area of agreement on core principles, where differences occur more on delivery than of the goal. On Part B, there is 4 for AO1 and 2 for AO2. It is on the C section, where the response is a clear Level 2. Two main fault lines. One, it is poorly planned, and switches from ideas and policies without a sense of direction. The points on Europe are at times vague. Secondly, it misses out on developing issues which were recent in the 2015 election, where the policy differences were set out. It has to be said that there is no need to give full and precise detail of the 2015 manifestos, but this was a chance to open up the debate. Now have a look at this candidate and how they approached Unit 1, Question 4. On A, the score is 4. The examples are clear. It is a shame, but the definition is not as full or accurate as it needed to be. However, on B, the score reaches Level 3 for AO1 at 5 and 2 for AO2. There is a little ambiguity in the comment at the end of the first paragraph, but otherwise the points are clear. Moving finally on to C, where the mark is 8 for all the AOs. It is a little historic in outline, but it does bring the issues up to date. It covers 3 main parties as opposed to 2, although it is possible to get Level 3 marks by making reference only to 2. The standard of communication is excellent. Students tended to avoid questions on political parties. This is a shame, as candidates who do them tend to perform well. Learning about political parties should be a major part of the study of AS politics and a platform for A2. Many candidates showed a lack of understanding of the 2 key concepts of consensus and adversary politics. Both of these terms are ideological in nature and have been asked many times. A good base for understanding them would be to look at past mark schemes. The topic of political parties could be improved by using the wealth of resources on the Internet to make the topic contemporary. There are too many to go into here. Many websites, such as the BBC, have graphs and charts which contrast numerous policy options. This is just one of many. It would serve centres well to look at past papers and mark schemes for further information. This was noted before, but these are all accessible on the Pearson Edexcel website. Moving back to Unit 2, now let us look at the essay on the Houses of Commons and Lords. Read through this response and put it in a level first. How many points does it make? Does it look at both houses? Does it seek to make or form a judgment out of the essay title? Is it well written, with good communication? How up-to-date with accurate information is it? Does it reach a conclusion? The answer to these questions is yes, it does so. It gains level 3 for all AOs, with a score of 17 for AO1, 10 for AO2, and 8 for AO3. True, there is more that could be added, but this is the extent which is expected of the notional 16 to 17-year-old in the time frame presented. Parliament is a central topic in Unit 2, and its importance runs through all the individual sections of the paper. Look through the guidance below to steer your delivery of the subject. Knowing the functions of Parliament is crucial. Make sure candidates are familiar with these and can illustrate them. Understanding its problems is imperative. This forms the basis for AO2 marks in the area. Means of fixing them or suggested improvements are very relevant, both for the essay and the source. Here you need to cover what changes have occurred in Parliament in recent times, and what changes have been proposed but not acted upon, such as full recall rights on MPs and Lords Reform Stage 2. Parliament can be an unforgiving topic if a candidate has not prepared. It is a meaty topic which needs clear guidelines. Here, a lack of examples and operative knowledge can be really limiting on the quality of the response. The theory of systems requires backing up with working examples. Ensure that candidates are keenly aware of the difference between a parliamentary and presidential system of government. It matters here and also in the section on the PM and Cabinet. A legislature has to be understood in terms of its relationship with the executive, and many weaker candidates often fail to appreciate and understand this process of accountability and responsibility lines. The fusion and separation of powers are crucial, and getting it right at AS is important once again for A2. Stick to the full terms of the set question. Encourage candidates to read and reread the words. It may be similar to what they have done before, but each question will be unique. Use examples where possible to show both AO1 and AO2. This brings the response to life, and as you can see in the examples, it makes a big difference, and is the hallmark of many Level 3 responses. The more recent and up-to-date the examples, the better. This proves that you are connected with the subject and can critically analyze emerging events. Ensure that candidates are fully familiar with all the key concepts listed on the specification. You will note that many of the shorter questions are built on these, so competence and clarity here is important. Get timing right and be guided by the principle of a mark per minute. Be sure not to spend more than the allocated time on structured questions. And make sure that you advise candidates to make their choice on the C section, not the A section. On the essays, encourage candidates to plan, albeit briefly, to ensure cohesion in the response. All essays will have contested viewpoints and will require criticism and analysis built into them. We have covered a lot of ground as we look back on scripts in 2015. See the common themes that emerge and revisit the scripts. The aim was to see how Level 2 scripts can be improved and make it through to Level 3. And there is ample evidence from the work to see the difference and what is required to elevate the responses. In short, there are no quick fixes, and performance depends on hard work and practice. Good luck.